Hi everyone, we're gonna start with the conference number 31, Mechanical Creatures. As you can see in the image, this is our human machine, our physical body, and we are kind of being like puppets, like robots, each time that ego comes and takes control of our human machines, of our inner world, of our thoughts, of our feelings, and we start feeding impulses, mechanical reactions, and that makes us like kind of puppets all the time, moved by the different dark elements of our ego, the 97% trapped conscience that is feeding of the energy that we have in the different centers of our human machine. So the objective of this conference is to understand why we are mechanical creatures and how to break that mechanical behavior, the different techniques that we have to achieving the instant, the concentration, the ability to connect with the intuition of our being, to achieve the perfect moment, to live the instant, to connect with the universal cosmic wisdom of our being that is maintaining the inner silence. So the mechanical behavior that we have in ourselves is when we all the time repeat the same scenes, the same dramas, the same comedies, the same tragedies of our life. And the causes of that are our egos, the 7 causal egos that are making us repeat the same mistakes once and over again. So it's evident that the law of recurrence in our daily life is presented in the different scenes of the movie of our life. It's like if our existence was already programmed, and we already have talked about the law of recurrence, that is the repetition, the incessant repetition of our different scenes on each moment of our existence. We think that this existence is brand new, and the different actions that we do in our daily life are unique and original. But if we analyze the different past existences that we have had as humans, because we have 108 human existences in which we can achieve the self-realization of our being and awaken the 100% of conscious. So if we analyze in the different repetition of our human existences, according to the wheel of samsara, we have returned once and over again in a human body, in a human physical body, and have repeated the same mistakes of our ego, and each time we have added more details to the legion of the obscurity that we have in our human soul. If, for example, in the last existence, my ego of anger fed kind of violence that I was willing to hit someone. For example, in this existence, the consequences of that ego of anger are going to be more serious. And I'm going to give more energy and more atomic weight to that psychological flow. So the law of recurrence in our daily life makes us really mechanical, and the different actors in any scenes that we repeat once and over again are the egos. For example, let's analyze a scene of a couple discussion that manifests. It can manifest that we can argue with our couple, have a discussion, and that we don't measure the consequences of our words, of our mechanical reactions, of our thoughts, of our behaviors, and we end up drinking because we want to just liberate from the anger that we are feeling. we are going to go to a tavern, and for example, the law of recurrence told me that the consequence of that in this existence to get drunk was going to be the physical death, the losing of my human existence. So we can transcend the law of recurrence if we can self-observe what we are thinking, what we are feeling, what we are planning to do, because those are the hidden behaviors of our egos that are manifesting in the inner part of our human microcosmos. If we can observe what is happening inside of us, how, for example, we want to insult, we want to reclaim, complain to our couple, you did this, you did that, I wasn't hurt, I was diminished, I was this and that, and mechanically we can transcend, for example, the ego of alcoholism that wants to go and forget about himself. For example, we observe that and we are willing to change that. We are going to change the movie of our existence. So the consequences or the actions that are going to manifest later are going to totally be different, but we can change that mechanical way of being if only we can observe the different events that we are living, that we are willing to recognize the internal states of conscience that we have in that moment. For example, my inner state was to obtain revenge, to be violent against myself because I want to destruct my physical body with alcohol, for example. And so I recognize that state of conscience and I am willing to change that event. For example, the words, for example, when I want to get even, take revenge, when I want to be sarcastic, ironic, and I am really hurtful with my couple, for example, in that scene, my thoughts, for example, that I think I'm always the one that is willing to change. I believe I'm the good person. I believe that I'm the only one that is willing to move forward. So I have an ego of being a good person. I think of myself the best. So that is a state of self-consideration, of self-importance. And my desires. For example, when I have the desire to get even and I want to be really mean and hurtful in order to achieve that revenge that I have inside, and feeding myself with that emotion of anger. So that mechanical behavior is caused by the instinctive repetition of memories and impressions by the sexual motor instinctive center. Our sexual motor instinctive center, that is at the height of our larynx, is the center which handles our motor energy, what we do in our words, actions, and omissions. So there is a possibility of achieving the conscious will if we are willing to deny ourselves the action of ego in the different centers of our human machines. We can be humans instead of being the instinctive, rational animal mistakenly called man. We can turn ourselves into human beings once we achieve the creation of our existential bodies for our being. But if we keep wasting our emotional energy, our mental energy, we keep feeding our egos by the instinctive repetition of that feeding of the 97% of trapped conscience, we are going to keep being the same mechanical creatures manipulated by those dark forces within us. What we need to do is transcend our instinct, and how we're gonna manage to do that while transforming our impressions. For example, that I have an impression that was created in my when I was a child. My impression that I was the sister that was diminished, that my sister was the best for my parents, that they gave her more attention, that they gave her more privileges than me. So I have that impression. That is an impression that I have created towards my sister, and that it makes me be really angry with her. So if I recognize that inside of myself and I'm willing to transcend it and to meditate it, I'm willing to take the wisdom out of it and recognize the mechanical and mistaken impressions that I have inside of myself that correspond to my self-consideration, my self-importance, my pride, my egocentrism, my narcissism. So I am willing to get myself out of my false personality and achieving a conscious state, feeling instead of inferior emotions, superior emotions, vibrating with the force of wisdom and love. I am willing to get myself out of my instincts. And instead of acting like an instinctive animal, I'm going to achieve a conscious state of being a human, of having conscious will over my impulses. So the observation of oneself is a technique that is going to help us and is the base of what is going to be the transformation, the radical transformation of our mechanical behavior. We need to be able to see our daily circumstances in order to change the way we think. For example, if I self-observe myself and I see that each time that I wake up, I have a mechanical impulse of lying down again. I feel lazy, I don't want to wake up, I feel lower, negative emotions, I want to just sleep all day. I think mechanically of avoiding to go to my job. I have feelings of hate. I dislike my job. I think that when I get there, I'm going to feel tired. I'm going to feel annoyed. So those are mechanical emotions, mechanical thoughts that I recognize that I have when I wake up mechanically every day. So the only way of changing that mechanical behavior is observing what I have inside of myself. If I don't observe that mechanical laziness, that mechanical dislike for my job, that mechanical feelings of being annoyed, of wanting to sleep more, of feeling pleasure of lying down again, sleeping 5 minutes more, that mechanical pleasure and that mechanical pain of getting, for example, into the shower and feeling cold water. If we don't observe that inside of ourselves, we cannot transcend that. We cannot radical transform ourselves. We are going to keep repeating the same feelings, thoughts, actions, and we're not going to be different. We're going to stay in our comfort zone. being as mechanical as we always are. So the purpose of this is just transforming ourselves. If we don't transform ourselves, we're going to keep bottled up in our ego and in our false personality and being the same puppets of our mechanical impulses of rage, of lust, of gluttony, of uh, pride. So a technique that is really important for that is doing a daily retrospection and starting by observing our own behavior one day. Take one day and just observe it from the beginning to the end, or from the end to the beginning. For me, it's better from the end to the beginning, so you can have the fresh actions of the end of the day and remember them and going back and going back and going back. Okay, that is retrospection. So it's better from the end to the start. And recognizing the events of any day of our life, at home, in the street, at work, what you felt, what you thought, what were your words in that moment, how did you acted. So in that daily retrospection, you're not going to just take into account the external actions, but also what you were feeling and thinking in that moment. For example, I was doing the retrospection, and in a moment I found out that I was doing a line at the bank to pay a bill, and in that moment, well, I can say, for example, I remember that I was doing the line and waiting for in order to pay my bank receipt, but that is only observing the external part of the event. You need to observe also the inner states of conscience. What were you feeling in that moment? For example, I felt that I was annoyed because I had impatience. I wasn't comfortable with waiting in line. I was kind of starting to get angry. I didn't want to be there waiting and waiting and waiting. So that I observed a mechanical state of impatience, of anger, of I observed an ego that started criticizing the girl that attended in the bank. Oh, she's really slow. She's really inefficient. Uh, the, she must be pulled out from there. She must be fired. She's not good for the job. So I observed an inner state of desiring bad things to happen to a person, of being, of antipathy, of criticism, of superiority. I observed many states of conscience that I have inside of myself during that moment. So that's the purpose, to recognize what were you thinking in the different events of your life in that day, and um, analyzing why did you thought that, why did you feel that, and those are the causes of your words and actions. The feelings and thoughts that you have inside always are going to be the roots that are going to have as consequence your words and actions. For example, if I'm always feeling antipathy towards my sister because she takes my things, she borrows my things without permission, and I'm feeling antipathy. I'm thinking she's abusive. She is taking advantage of my trust in her. So I'm feeling that negative emotions all the time, and suddenly I explode and I start saying words. oh, you're this, you're that, you're abusive, stop doing that, oh, you are annoying. So my feelings are always going to be translated in words and then actions. That's why people end up in discussions and even in fights, physically hurting each other, because they have accumulated negative feelings and thoughts toward the person mechanically during different moments and scenes of their lives. So, if we do that daily retrospection, we are going to recognize not only the external events that we lived in that day, but also the inner states of conscience that we were feeling, what we were thinking about what happened, and we are going to transcend it. We are going to understand why did that happen, in order to avoid repeating the same mistakes again and come out from that law of recurrence, that is conscious reflection, the intimate reflection of our being, recognizing how mechanical, absurd, and irrational we are sometimes. Well, all the time, most of the time, because we have 97% of bottled up conscience in our ego. So we're going to be really mechanical, but if we are willing to transcend that, we're going to become really conscious, really lucid. And that is the principle of, for example, achieving a practice like the astral projection. If you are really lucid and conscious in the instant, as well, by the law of correspondence, you're going to be really conscious in the astral projection. So now comes the part of changing the mechanical reactions. When you self-observe your inner world and you refuse to do what your egos want, it's clear that you're going to stop being machines. So, for example, if you recognized that in the interaction with your family there was an ego of anger that is complaining, why do you make me do the dishes all the time? This is not fair. Always me. You're always recharging on me, etc., etc. Whatever you meditate and recognize the different egos manifesting. For example, you recognize that you're feeling self-consideration, but there's also an ego that is thinking, oh, I'm the best, I'm really responsible, you're not. So I recognize an ego that is pretending to be good, really conscious, and that is an ego of self-importance too. An ego of sarcasm, for example, and you observe that you're not unique. You don't have your individuality, your sacred individuality. You are divided in your multiple parts, and those are the forces of the ego. This is the ego of anger, this is the ironical ego, this is the sarcastic ego, and there are multiple fractions of your mind that correspond to one self. You don't have one self, you have many selves inside of you, and that correspond to the different details of your 7 causal egos: anger, gluttony, pride, envy, and the different 7 causal egos. Excuse me if I forget one. And what is going to take us out of being mechanical is being conscious that we have those different fragments inside ourselves and eliminating them in order to achieve the sacred individuality and connecting with the wisdom of our being. How we're gonna do that? So, acting consciously during the day, and how we're going to achieve the conscious way to act if we are so divided in the different egos that are manifesting through our human machine all the time. Well, we're gonna practice a technique that is called the ongoing debt. What is the ongoing debt? Is eliminating the ego that is manifesting and come back to the instant and live concentrated with your conscious center in the action that you're doing. You recognize the ego of sadness, then you recognize the ego of being scared, the ego of being really insultive, angry. So you're going to beg your divine mother, that is the universal principle of love, the superior law that can transcend it all. You are gonna beg her, Divine Mother, eliminate me this ego of sadness. For example, if you're feeling really melancholical, for example, if you were remembering something from your past and you feel sadness because a person that was with you in that moment is not already here, he passed away, she passed away, and you feel sad, you're feeling a lot of nostalgical. So you analyze that, and you ask yourself, is this truth? Is this fair? Is this useful? I'm wasting a lot of emotional energy, and I'm not taking anything useful from that. This is not helping me, and this is taking away my emotional energy. I'm not achieving any conscious objective with this. My conscious is falling asleep, is completely sleeping. I'm not lucid of what I'm doing in this moment. I am wasting uh, my sacred energy of my being. I am unbalancing the different centers of my human machine, so I stop that. Divine Mother, eliminate me this ego of sadness that wants to feel low all the time. And you stop feeding that negative emotion and come back to the instant, living the moment fully conscious and lucid of what you're feeling, of what you're thinking, and not thinking, just knowing, centering in the faculty of the intuition that is connecting to your being, and be able to be in internal silence. So each time that one of these voices of your ego wants to take you out from the instant, you're going to beg the Divine Mother uh, to kill you, that psychological flaw, and come back to your heart, to feel your heart, to be concentrated, and be in the instant, in internal silence. So that's the way you're going to shape conscious thinking, conscious acting, conscious talking, and conscious feeling. That is the quaternary, and is going to help you to save energy for the superior creation of the existential bodies for your being. That is during the suprasex, you're going to do the sexual transmutation, and that energy that you have saved is going to serve to awaken your conscience. Oh, sorry. And what is another and the most important part in order to stop being a mechanical creature? Well, stop believing that we're good. If we believe that we are innocent, that we are fully conscious, that we are good people, that we don't make any mistakes, we have something that is the false sense of the self. We think we're good, we think we're perfect, that we are completely self-realized, and it doesn't help us because we cannot see our inner darkness. We think we are cheap, white and perfect sheep, and we don't see the wolf that we have inside. We need to be able to see the wolf that we have inside ourselves, our instinct, our low emotions, our awful creatures that we have in our microcosmos. Because if we don't fight against our darkness, if we don't observe that darkness, we think we are full of light. And if we don't transcend our darkness, well, we cannot stop being mechanical. One can think that is perfect, and that state is the state of being mythomaniacs. We already studied that in the conference of fanatism and mythomania, that we behave uh, as we had the truth of the universal wisdom, as we were gods, and we are completely mechanical, routine characters that don't want to see their inner darkness. This knowledge of oneself is to get out the wisdom of evil. But if you don't see how evil you are, well, you're not going to take out the wisdom out of your evilness, and you're not going to awaken your conscience. In the wisdom that your being has is the ability to connecting with your virtues, faculties, forces, and powers that you have as a 3% of full consciousness of justice, wisdom, and love. So this is the way of getting out of that mechanical railway of our existence and making the same mistakes once and over again and then apologizing. We need to change, intimate change. And that is only going to be achieved in order if we fight our ego. Okay, this was the conference. If you have any questions or any suggestions, I'm willing to listen and to answer as I can possibly do. Thank you for your attention.